Well, it is good to be back with you again for another day of Bible study as we are continuing on with our journey of perspective shift. Today, we are still in the book of Acts, chapter 17, as we are trying to follow Paul and figure out there exactly what we are finding in the story of the start of the church that was intended by God to be kind of a part of church forever and ever, amen, as Randy Travis says, and identify maybe the things that are less helpful. What we're seeing in this story, at least what I'm seeing, is a lot of resonance in my own life and my own journey in a lot of churches that I've connected to, that I'm aware of, and I'm also seeing a lot of application to other areas of life, not just the church. And so I hope that you are seeing those things as well, and we will try to focus on those things as we continue on in our journey. If you'd like to know more about us, you can visit www.christtable.today. Sign up for the email list there, and also want to encourage you, if you want to help support us financially here in just a couple of weeks, we're going to have a copy of an incredible book by, well, I think we let the cat out of the bag on Sunday. So if you want to know who the author is, go back and watch the first few minutes of the Sunday service. But I'll keep it quiet here. But the whole box is kind of centered around this idea of unity and team, because, as you know, the Olympics are starting here in just a few days, and we have a Bible study as a part of this. We also send some other things to you, and so anyone who's a financial supporter, regular contributor to Christ Table, we send these through the mail. And if you're unable to give at this time, just let us know, and I'll send one in the mail to you for free. If you'd like to be a part of this Bible study as we continue, in fact, when I looked today, I think we only have one more a week or so as a part of this, but we'd still love to have you along for the journey. Go.christtable.today/perspective shift. Well, our reading for today is a little shorter than it has been on some of the other days, but Acts chapter 17, verses 10 through 15. And why don't we just dig in? When we come to this passage, we are following Paul around the Mediterranean basin as he goes to church to church to church, and to synagogue to synagogue to synagogue, expressing the message of Jesus Christ as the fulfillment of Judaism, as being the Messiah, the great hoped-for one. And I say following Paul around the Mediterranean basin as though it's a simple journey, but it's really not a simple journey. If you're following Paul, you are on this journey going to be running a lot of the time, and sometimes that's running into towns, and oftentimes that's running away from towns because of mobs. And what we have seen is that no matter where Paul goes, it seems as though his message causes a mob mentality and rioting. People aren't happy. And maybe there have been moments in your life where you've felt that way, whether it was a faith-based message or not, that you just stirred up trouble no matter where you went. And that is the story of Paul here as we jump in to his story after having essentially had to run under the cover of night from the city of Thessalonica. That very night, the believers of Thessalonica sent Paul and Silas to Berea. And when they arrived there, what does Paul do? Paul goes directly to the Jewish synagogue. We could just kind of run past that verse, but the thing that I am floored by is the fact that Paul continues to remain true to his values and to his mission and what he wanted to accomplish, no matter what he faces. If I had been run out of a city or two, I might consider never going back into any other city again with that message. I might consider doing things differently. I might consider throwing in the towel, throwing my hands up and saying it's just not worth the hassle or the danger of going and doing these things. But Paul, even after having been run by a mob out of the city in the middle of the night, which means they were probably intending to stone him, to kill him, when he gets to the new city, what does he do? Well, he goes immediately to the Jewish synagogue and starts again their teaching. It's interesting, though, that Paul leaves against his own wishes. He would have, and we pointed this out yesterday, probably rather stayed, But because he knew it was going to cause a lot of antagonizing for the people who did agree with him in the city, he decided that the better thing he could do than to stay and cause more trouble for the followers of Jesus who were there was to leave. He didn't want to make life difficult for the believers in Thessalonica. So sometimes in your journey, you make a decision that may not be necessarily in line. Like, you may have more gas in the tank as far as fighting, as far as holding on, as far as persevering. But if you do that, if you continue to hold on, to persevere, continue to teach truth to a mob at work, at church, in your family, it may well be that just your presence is too much and harms other people. And so Paul falls on his own sword in a way. But he doesn't stop teaching. But I want you to look at the people here in Berea, because this is a really, really unique city in that it reacts differently than almost, if not all, every other city that Paul's been to. And the people of Berea were more open-minded than those in Thessalonica, and they listened eagerly to Paul's message. And this isn't just saying the people in the synagogue of Berea. This is saying that this is a mentality that was common in the city itself. There are some people who have tried to kind of explain why this was in Berea, but at the end of the day, we just don't know why these people in this place ended up being different than every other person in every other place. But they were more open-minded and they listened eagerly. And so it's interesting, growing up and over the years, the Bereans have always been kind of the heroes of, I'll say, ultra-conservative biblical theology. If you see a church that's Berean Bible Church or Berean Baptist Church, if you see a church that's has Berean anywhere in the name, or maybe their main verse is this verse in Acts chapter 17 about the Bereans, what that is that is a tip-off that these people take the Bible usually very literally, that they are very theologically conservative, and that they're going to be usually very defensive against anything that might be perceived as a watering down of the message of the Bible, or as a compromise with culture, which is a very interesting thing, because that's not who the Bereans were. If we go back and look at this, the people of Berea were more open-minded, and they listened eagerly to Paul's message. They didn't listen eagerly to Paul's message because they were in agreement with Paul's message, because they looked at the Old Testament and they said, yeah, well, this matches up with our interpretation of what our texts, our sacred texts say. No, what's happening here is they're hearing, just like in every other city, a message that is counterintuitive. They're hearing a message that is controversial. They're hearing a message that is counter to what they have been taught, what they have learned, and what they have come to believe about faith and religion and God. But it hits differently here. And it hits differently here because they are willing to consider that they are wrong. They're willing to consider that their Sunday school teachers, maybe they weren't 100% right. Or maybe they were at the time, but maybe something changed. Maybe new information has come up. Sorry, I'm getting excited here. Maybe new information has come to light, and it has. Jesus. Churches today would say, well, God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Jesus is here. Things don't change. But we still learn new things. We still see new things. We still encounter new information. Homosexuality. Yeah, I'm going to go there. When I was growing up, there was no genetic link to say you were conclusively DNA born that way. And so the whole theology behind the treatment of the LGBTQ people group was based on something that was false. New information comes along, and we have a choice in what we do with that new information. But the choice should be to listen and to be open-minded. And so really, I think the Bereans, when I say conservative and political here, I mean theologically, not necessarily politically, but really the Bereans were quite liberal, were quite on the opposite side of the way we think of that term and those people today, and that they were open-minded. They listened to things, and they weighed things that they had been taught and believed were false. So they've wrongly been conservative heroes. They should be heroes for all of us, right? And they searched the scriptures day after day to see if Paul and Silas were teaching the truth. They didn't search the scriptures day after day to try to prove Paul and Silas wrong. The way that is worded there is so key. Because oftentimes what happens, even if we're willing to hear and consider alternate perspectives and information, things that are countercultural, counterintuitive, what we do is we end up searching the scriptures to validate our own opinion. And we find one verse, rip it out of context, even though there may be 6 other verses that say the exact opposite of that in context. And we say, nope, that can't be true. My mind is closed again because I've found why what I believe is right. It wasn't what the Bereans were doing. The Bereans were searching the scriptures day after day, trying to prove that Paul and Silas are right. And if at the end of the day they can't prove that Paul and Silas are right, well, then they have a choice to make. But as a result of this mentality, verse 12 says, many Jews believed, as did many of the prominent Greek women and men. Because of this style of logic and ration and willingness to consider other perspectives, there is a flood of people who come to faith. This is the type of person that we should be. These are the type of churches that we should be. But you didn't think it was just going to be easy, did you? But with some of the Jews in Thessalonica, and I remember Thessalonica is a city that literally just a few verses ago, Paul and Silas have rushed out of in the dead of night. But when some Jews in Thessalonica learned that Paul was preaching the word of God in Berea, they went there and they stirred up trouble. Don't be surprised when troublemakers hunt you down. Don't be surprised when troublemakers try to follow you into your next place of employment. Don't be surprised when troublemakers try to follow you into your next church. Don't be surprised when troublemakers create troll accounts online and try to continue to dog your steps and your work and the good that you're trying to do in the world. Don't be surprised. It's wrong. It's awful. It's terrible. It's sad. And others around you should not allow it. But expect it. If you're doing a good work, if you're teaching good things, if you're living in the right way, people aren't going to leave you alone. Trouble isn't usually the sign of a false gospel or a false way of life. Trouble is usually the sign that you're headed in the right direction. And look what happens here. The believers acted at once. They show their character not just in the way that they think and their open-mindedness, but they also show their character in the way that they live. Those things are connected. The way we think and the way that we live are connected. Show me how you live, and I can tell you how you think. Show me how you think, and I can tell you how you live. The believers acted at once. We cannot disconnect the body from the mind. We cannot disconnect our actions from our words. Read James. The believers acted at once, sending Paul onto the coast while Silas and Timothy remained behind. Those escorting Paul went with him all the way to Athens. Then they returned to Berea with instructions for Silas and Timothy to hurry up and join them. This is like military level movements and actions, strategery here. This is incredible. These people are worth emulating, and I hope that you would find yourself in the city of Berea rather than in the city of Thessalonica. But at the end of the day, especially when it comes to faith, but also when it comes to everything else in life, at the end of the day, I think we find ourselves to be members, citizens of one city or the other. You're either a Berean or you're a Thessalonican. And before you jump to I'm a Berean, I do some soul searching. I think it's incumbent upon us to do some soul searching. And if you're easily triggered by other ideas and outside opinions, you're probably not a Berean. Until tomorrow, y'all. It's been good to be with you. Happy reading.